So, this is it. The final step towards beating the entire national Pokédex in order. If the first 8 videos were the gyms, and part 1 of Gen 9 was the Elite Four, then this video is very much the champion battle. And then I suppose, if more Pokemon get added in later games, that can be the post-game. But anyway, welcome to what is, at the time of recording, the grand finale of my challenge run, in which I'm obtaining every Pokemon in the order that they appear in the National Dex, all 1025 of them. I've completed the first 8 generations, and most of Gen 9, which I covered in the previous video. If you haven't seen that yet, you definitely need to watch that first, and if you haven't seen any of this series at all, well, you better check those out too. I'll also be releasing a video roughly a week after this comes out where I reveal all my plans for the future, including a brand new Pokédex series that I'll try and do for every generation. This challenge has actually not been revealed yet, and I'll be considering it to be the sequel to this series. There's also a big living dex I'm going to be doing entirely on stream that I'll be starting the day this video releases, and that'll be my stream of choice for the foreseeable future. Like with part 1 of the Gen 9 segment of this challenge, the whole thing was streamed live on Twitch. I was nicknaming every Gen 9 Pokemon after people in chat, so if you want to check me out there, go to twitch.tv/KillerKiwi1642. I also have a VODs channel called Kiwi VODs, where I save every single second of footage from my streams. And if you like these videos but streams aren't your thing, then you're in luck, because I have a ton of other content on this channel for you to watch while you simultaneously consume your dinner. I know that if you're watching this, you definitely know the rules by now, but you know what? Just for old time's sake, I'm gonna go over them one more time. And I also won't put the timestamp to skip to, so now you're stuck with me. Unless you skip manually, of course. Anyway, I must obtain every Pokemon in the order that they appear in the National Pokédex. Once I've obtained one, I am then allowed to move on and catch the next one after it. However, I am allowed to freely obtain any Pokemon as many times as I like after I've gotten it once. If, for example, I have a Duraludon sitting around waiting to evolve into Archaludon, but I haven't even gotten number 1011 Diplin, well guess what, Duraludon? Wait your turn. Your evolution is number 1018. Since I've gotten every Pokemon up to and including 1010 by this point, any of those ones that appear could be obtained from the beginning. Alternative forms do not matter for this challenge, so as long as I get any form of a certain species, that's fine. I can use any games that I want to, and can refer back to games that I've used previously in the challenge if certain Pokemon can only be obtained in them. It's not a living dex, so I don't need to obtain them all in one game or have them all together in one place. I can trade back and forth with these games as much as I want as well. The Pokédex in one game isn't what I'm keeping track of, just the Pokemon themselves being obtained. I can use any side games, peripherals, glitches, events, anything, except cheating obviously. However, I can only use alternative methods if there is no way at all to obtain it in a core series game without breaking the chain and catching a Pokemon out of order. If I get a Pokemon in a side game, I won't count it as obtained in the context of this challenge until it has been transferred into a mainline game or into Pokemon Home. Also, if I ever do obtain a Pokemon outside of normal means, then I will need to obtain it properly later on if possible. And with all that out of the way, let's start the finale. Oh, but of course, if you've managed to get all the way to the end of this challenge run and somehow haven't subscribed, then please make sure to do so and also like the video and all that good stuff, because as I've said before, I'm not going anywhere and I'm still going to keep making new videos for you to all enjoy. Right, let's start for real. I might have mentioned it once or twice, but Ogerpon is a huge roadblock, as catching it will ruin the challenge, since its capture is required to get to Loyal 3. Instead of putting my streams and videos on hiatus to wait on an event, however, I instead went ahead and did everything that could possibly be done without progressing the DLC story. I spoke to Perrin, who wanted me to catch 150 Pokemon in the Kitakami Dex in order to move her story along, so I got to it. Fortunately, it didn't need to be done in any sort of dex order, as I had already caught 99% of them during the challenge. I started this journey with a decent number of Pokemon in the Kitakami Dex, as there is some overlap with the Paldea Dex, and I caught a few other randoms beforehand. The next one I caught was one of my absolute favourites, Corphish, and from there I just ran around Kitakami and caught everything I could find that I didn't have. For example, Heracross. I was at the Mossfell Confluence as this stand sells syrupy apples. These are required in order to evolve Applin into its secret third evolution, newly added by the Tealmass DLC. That evolution being the hilarious looking Diplin. This also has an evolution, but it's a little later, so I left it until then. And now, time for the slow ASMR Pokérap that no one asked for. I caught Growlithe, Swadloon, Ekans, Bellsprout, Seedot, Riolu, Vulpix, Petilil, Stantler, Sentret, Kricketot, Poltergeist. Oh wait, that's the next one, the National Dex. So yeah, I caught that and nicknamed it Lamp Disease. Now, back to the catching spree. I got Coughing, Geodude, Houndour, Spoink, Chingling, Slugma, Big Rock, Jangmo-O, Nosepass, Unremarkable, Teacup, using that to evolve Poltergeist into Sinistcha, Spinarak, Starly, Pichu, Poochyena, Arbok, Swaddle, Fomantis, Crawdaunt, Ralts, Mienfoo, Grubbin, Weepinbell, Curlia, Charjabug, Squavit, Cutiefly, Yanma, Mightyena, Rockruff, Staravia, Staraptor, Rabombi, Curlia, Bonsly, Hatena, Noibat, Salandit, Swinub. Wow, that's a lot of Swinub. Whooper, Quagsire, Vullaby, Ducklet, Gardevoir, Crammer. I can't do this anymore. I was planning on doing every single Pokemon individually, but I mean, people are just going to skip straight to the loyal 3-bit. Like, I'm not even going to bother with the rest. Look, here's all the Pokemon. Look at them. There they are. Like, lots of them. Yeah, and then also evolving as well. Yeah, did a lot of that. I caught more. Yep. Look, there they all are. All the Pokemon that I can't be bothered saying out loud. And then I also did some trades and caught Bronzor, and that was the 150th Pokemon, and I have gone so off script. Oh well. And with that, I had completed a little bit of the prerequisites for some later Pokemon. I talked to Perrin, told her the news, battled her, and by putting myself through that hell, I unlocked the ability to go camping with her. I was sent on a survey to take pictures of Pokemon in order to look for the supposed Blood Moon Beast. And so I ran around for a while like an idiot, trying to find Pokemon to take pictures of, having to get 10 in total. I'm pretty sure it does actually. And so the survey was completed and the Blood Moon Beast appeared, which is actually just a really scary looking Ursaluna. I was shoved into a battle with it, and it was actually a required capture, so I was very glad that it was already caught in Legends Arceus. With that all out of the way, I was given a free Hisuian Growlithe that never got used, and without wasting any time, I went straight to Naranja Academy, talked to Serrano, and got taken to Blueberry Academy. Time to do part 2 of the DLC, the Indigo Disc. Without completing part 1. Let's see how far the game actually allows me to go before I have to face reality. Upon entering, I met Lacey. Fun fact, she is the daughter of Clay from Black and White, and for winning a battle against her, I was able to enter the terrarium. This would be my home for a while, and I needed to catch a lot of Pokemon here. And the reason for that? Well, look who was waiting for me here. That first grind fest was just the warm-up. This time I needed to catch 200 Pokemon in the Blueberry Dex. Again, I didn't have many to begin with, so I just jumped straight in. Again, I was planning on saying the names of literally every single one, but then it caused the video to be 10 to 20 minutes longer than it needed to be, so let's just not. I will however point out the fact that I caught Duraludon, which has a new evolution that I haven't got yet, but won't be getting just yet either. I nicknamed it Closent, and I'll also just quickly point out that it took me 8 years to realise that the Switch can be set to dark mode. Really odd since I use dark mode on everything. Anyway, I got more Pokemon and eventually decided I'd start evolving as well. As you can see, I was once again back at my old favourite location. People were telling me that this was a bad idea because the experience here is slower and I could spawn higher level Chansey and Blissey in the terrarium. That may be true, but if I listened to them, I wouldn't have found this diseased frog. I ran towards the belly bolt, but its Tadbulb underling blocked me, and it belly bolted away from me, but thankfully it didn't despawn. I caught it in a luxury ball, and that was another to add to the collection. I, as always, give it a creative and fitting name. I did as many more evolutions as I could be bothered doing that session, and then I ended it for the night. Alright, so at the end of that catching spree, I had a total of 132 Pokémon in the Blueberry Dex. It contains 243 and I needed 200, so that shouldn't be too much of an issue, right? Wrong. We have a rather large elephant in a very small room and it's time to address it. Every starter Pokémon from Generation 1 to 8 is in the Blueberry Dex. However, they don't just appear by default. In order to have them spawn in the terrarium, they need to have been placed there manually, and you do that by spending BP at the League Club room. But what is the League Club room? Well, it's a place I couldn't access until completing the Teal Mask. And to complete the Teal Mask, I had to catch Ogerpon. And I've said it a million times, but catching Ogerpon means skipping the 3 before it. Not having access to these Pokémon yet may not sound too daunting, until you realise that there are 72 Pokémon when adding up all these starters and their evolutions, along with an additional 7 that I couldn't get yet due to it breaking the Dex order, and Walking Wake and Iron Leaves not counting towards your total, and that meant that 81 Pokémon could not be added to the Blueberry Dex at this point. And I'm no mathematician, but I know that if you subtract 81 from 243, that's a lot less than 200. Obviously I could have just laid the run to rest for now, or moved on to Violet to get the Kitakami Dex done along with most of the Blueberry Dex as well, then wait and see what happened. But I don't like to back down from a challenge, and I was determined to get as much of both games' stories done as possible without actually completing the Teal Mask. One rule of this challenge that I've always made absolutely sure to shout loud and clear is that I can use any games at all that I've used previously. That meant that if I wanted to, I could get starters from any of the save files of games that I'd already played. And I had already obtained every single starter in existence. Although an issue here is the fact that I lost the save files for all of the GBA, DS and 3DS games. What a shame. Well, I guess I'll just deal with the Switch games first. I went back to Shield. I had all 3 fully evolved Gen 8 starters, but I was also able to get a free Charmander from Leon's room. After doing that, I swapped over to Sword, which hadn't moved at all ever since I got the triple catch of Glastrier, Spectrier and Calyrex. In that order, of course. I had never visited the Isle of Armor in that game since I never actually had any reason to, but I did have one now. After meeting my Sword Isle of Armor rival Clara, who's just as delightful to talk to as Avery, I went into the dojo. In Shield, I chose Bulbasaur, and therefore this time I chose Squirtle instead. With 6 starter families secured, I traded them from Sword into Shield, since Shield was on the Switch with Pokémon Home, and of course I made sure I had at least one from each of the starters available in Legends Arceus. And now we get to the rest of the starters. Unfortunately, that's all I can get from the Switch games. Well, I could get a Gen 7 starter from Sword and Shield, but it requires you to find 100 hidden Alolan Diglett, so that was a no. You can get some starters from Dynamax Adventures, but they're random and I could be resetting all day for them. And you can catch all Gen 1 to 4 starters in BDSP, but only in the postgame, which I was not prepared to do. The solution to this problem was the fact that my 3DS still has Pokémon Bank, because I was one of the lucky few who still had a subscription to it when the 3DS shop shut down. And I of course also made sure to keep it installed along with many other games. I'm probably sitting on a goldmine by having all of these. So as I said earlier, I lost the save files of all the games on the GBA, DS and 3DS, and therefore if I wanted to get other starters in Scarlet and Violet, I'd need to start new save files. Oh, and I lost the ability to record via my computer, so I had to record me getting these starters on my phone. So yeah, here's me starting many new games in Pokémon X to get the Gen 6 starters, each time transferring it to Bank, starting a new game and doing it again. Then I did the same in Alpha Sapphire for the Gen 3 starters, and Moon for the remaining 2 Gen 7 starters. This footage does not do justice how long this took. I was doing this in between everything else during an entire day. Adding all of them up, I was still missing the families of Chikorita, Totodile, Snivy and Tepig. All but one would be easy if ZA was out, but it's not, so I had 20 starter families, 60 in total. Yes, I can multiply by 3, which was a nice boost to my Blueberry Dex total. Thankfully, Pokémon Bank does still actually work, so I was able to transfer the 8 from 3DS games into Home, along with the 12 I got from other games and dump them all into Scarlet. I spared my viewers from having to see any of that madness live. I reached 132 in the previous stream, did all that offline and hopped into the next one with a total of 150 in the Blueberry Dex. Yes, not 152. It turned out that Hisuian forms don't count in that Pokédex. I stuck all of the unevolved starters into my team and started massacring every wild Pokemon I found, very quickly evolving them. Of course, I won't subject you to more catches, but basically, after I'd evolved all of them, I then had to do a lot of breeding and it was very boring. I wanted to have 2 eggs from each Pokemon so that I could trade them to Violet as well, to make that go by easier. Although saying that, in Violet I did do all the other captures for Kitakami and the Blueberry Dexes properly, rather than trading every single one from Scarlet, because that would be extraordinarily boring. Anyway, I had eggs containing each of the starter families I'd ported in, and so I then got to hatching. When I reached 190, I got a metal alloy from the Pokédex rewards, useful for later. I then did some more trade evolutions, and got annoyed because I was missing Chinchu but it kept submerging itself, so I couldn't get into a battle with it. While wondering what was causing this, I noticed this weird, discoloured Seadra. I genuinely couldn't tell if this was the lighting or not, but it was shiny, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that sparkle for the 5th time in Scarlet and Violet. I nicknamed it Kiryu because it's like a dragon, but not literally a dragon. Also, Alolan Diglett evolved into Dugtrio, no idea how it's floating like that, and I also did actually catch Chinchu. And then Snubbull evolved into Granbull, and Quillfish evolved into Overquill, bringing me to 200 Pokemon in the Blueberry Dex. I don't know why Perrin couldn't give me these without me having to go through such a tedious process, but regardless, after talking to her I was shown photos of 2 Pokemon that I cannot catch yet due to my rules, but when the time came I would of course be able to catch them. The most annoying thing here was the fact that I was going to have to do this all again in Violet, because there are 2 version exclusive Pokemon here in each game. Before I did swap to Violet, I decided I'd progress the Teal'c story a bit further. Their granddad told me the story of the Loyal 3, but I've got my own version of the story, where they completely screw me over due to their Pokédex positioning, and yeah, that's it. I handed over the titular Teal'c, Kieran got all jealous because he wasn't part of the Ogreplon club. We finally visited the 3rd sign after about 3 months, I battled him yet again and won, with this Sandshrew cheering me on the whole time. Even during the cutscene. I ended up catching it, just because. I went to the crystal pool, fought a Milotic, got some crystals, and found out that Kieran had stolen the mask, so I then needed to track him down. Flawless game. I went to this building where, you know, it would be great if I could just catch those 3. I beat Kieran again, he punched a wall which gave him a little ouchie, I got the Teal'c back, and then the lousy 3 resurrected. Why doesn't the game just let me catch them now? Why does my guy just stand there? Why did he let them get away? Just catch them, it's not hard. Yeah, anyway, I tried to see if I could catch Okidogi from here, but no such luck. I actually had to fight Monkidori here, funnily enough, but it can't be caught, just battled. Anyway, we became pals with Ogrepon. Thankfully this falling doesn't count as me actually getting it though. I decided to see if I could just get Ogrepon to fall to its death, and that way I wouldn't need to catch it at all. Didn't work. I had to gather information on the Loyal 3 from people in the town, which I did in their Pokédex order by the way. I also procrastinated progress while in denial by drinking from the Magikarp fountain. Anyway, yeah, I gathered evidence, returned to Ogrepon, and found out where Okidogi, Monkidori, and Fezandipiti are found. I couldn't catch them here though, oh no, the game teases so much, I hate it. My face was the opposite of this. Right, so, time to do every single thing I just did, again, but in Violet. Don't worry though, I'm not showing the entire process again. As I said earlier though, I did genuinely catch every Pokemon again instead of trading them from Scarlet, because that would be the absolute antithesis of fun. Yeah, so there's Sentret. And there's me suddenly taking on the Blood Moon Ursaluna. I named this one after a really famous cartoon bear. Then I entered the terrarium, ready to take on the Blueberry Dex once again. I charged straight forward, and without even noticing it first, the very first Pokemon I found was yet another shiny. I have no idea where this luck was coming from, 6 full odds shinies in these 2 games. As I said, I didn't even notice I found a shiny until I saw a rusty looking Rhyhorn. Appropriate name, as always. Again, not going to waste your precious time. I'm sure you're close to finishing your dinner or your cleaning or dishes or whatever chore you do while watching my videos, and you want to find out how I overcame the big problem. I will however mention I did trade to get the starters from Scarlet, and also Rabsca because I wasn't going through another walking evolution. I got up to 200 Pokemon in Violet's Blueberry Dex, spoke to Perrin and unlocked the ability to catch another 2 new Pokemon when I reached them in the Dex. I then swapped back to Scarlet once again. Do you see Okidogi in the distance there? Yeah, I can't catch it. It's the Titan form and I have to knock it out, along with the other 2, and that'll let me catch Ogerpon. However, I wanted to confirm without a doubt that I couldn't get it through a glitch, so on the Union Circle I ran up to it using my Violet save and tried to enter a battle with it. On Violet, which I was using in handheld mode, there was actually nothing there. It was a long shot, but worth a try. Instead I just had to bite the bullet and start progressing the Teal Mask story. I knocked out the Titan Okidogi, it shrunk, and I couldn't catch it. Thanks game. Also, Ogerpon got one of its masks back. Hope you're happy. I did the same to Munkidori, and again to Fezandipiti. Then I returned to the village, and everyone now likes Ogerpon, and it was a happy ending. For some, anyway. I returned to the dreaded den, and I had one more trick up my sleeve that should definitely work, assuming that this game has branching paths. For you see, Kieran challenged me to a battle, and the winner gets to keep Ogerpon. So I fielded a somewhat weaker team than normal. And as we can quite clearly tell was going to happen, after wiping I just had to try again. So I actually did beat him this time. I also can confirm that if you try to battle Ogerpon with all of your boxes full, this message shows up. After all that build up, the people in the next stream were confused when I just went straight into the fight and caught Ogerpon. Does that mean I just gave up? I just wanted to be allowed to move the game forward instead of potentially waiting forever? No, of course not. But first, I speak directly to you. Yes, you, the person who seeked on the video and skipped straight here. I've got a question for you. Which shinies did I catch on the lead up to this point? Can't answer? Well, you know what to do. And as for the rest of you, time to show off how I got the loyal 3 before Ogerpon. I spent over a year trying to figure out a solution to this problem, and in that time I actually did come up with a bunch of them. Some are rather unorthodox methods, but still very much possible. First, let's look at a really good option that genuinely will work within a main series Pokemon video game without having to get Ogerpon. I present to you the E-Reader. This handy-dandy device lets you scan E-cards into any Gen 3 game. Emerald is the best bet for this, so I tried it with this game. An interesting piece of trivia about the E-Reader is that the contents of some of these cards don't exist in the game until they're scanned in. For example, there are a bunch of E-cards that summon trainers into the game to fight, and change berry number 43 from the Enigma berry into a bunch of various other berries with new images and new names. The fact that these have unique new images and names intrigued me. My line of thinking would be that if I could write into a blank E-card to morph an existent Pokemon's sprite, name, stats, type, moves, and so on and so forth, to be that of Okidogi, followed by Munkidori, then Fezandipiti. Ignore the fact that the fairy type doesn't exist at that point, and the fact that there was a 10 character limit. I'd be able to get them in a mainline game. And this wouldn't actually be cheating, due to the way in which the e-reader works, as it is a legitimate peripheral. I'm not an authority on this subject at all, so I'm not able to fully explain why this is different from using a Game Shark or an action replay, but just know that doing this counts as using the game's own mechanics, even if the cards are modified. I did get in contact with the authority on e-cards and arbitrary code execution, known as Blussy, asking a bunch of questions about whether or not I could use Ace, RNG manipulation and the e-reader to get what I wanted. They confirmed with me that using Ace in the game to do this would be impossible. RNG manipulation doesn't work the way I thought, and although it is technically possible to rewrite the code to add these Pokemon, it would require many cards, and a lot of work obviously. And, well, I haven't coded anything in like 8 years, so that was very much out of my reach. Though someone on that server did manage to make a Zorua in Emerald, so there was a bit of hope to make me think that theoretically this is possible. But I didn't manage it. Bear that in mind though, it would be possible for someone with the technical know-how, which I, as I explained, do not have. That was a shame, but anyway. What's next? Let's have a quick check of the TCG mobile game. Nope, no Loyal 3 to be seen. It's also not a main game, but you never know, they might link it to Pokemon Home one day. Oh, speaking of the card game, how about the physical one? I mean, the set Twilight Masquerade has them, and I actually already had them from boosters I randomly got a while back. And, you know, I've got them stacked in the correct order. This is a mainline game, you know? It's an official TCG expansion. Oh, the Pikachu pumpkin symbol? That's just because I got them from a Halloween event booster box. They still count as part of the set according to Bulbapedia, I promise. Still not satisfied by that? Well, if you insist on them being added to the actual main video games, well, the Switch does use cards. Let's see what happens if I just do this. Here we go. They've landed in Pokemon Home. Alright, well, I guess I can call it a day with that. No? Alright, what else? They've not been obtainable in Pokemon Go yet, but surely it'll happen eventually, right? An interesting thing to keep in mind is the fact that they do actually exist in the coding. Therefore, I wanted to see if it was possible to hack the Pokemon Go servers. Right, what else is there to try? Well, they've not had their inevitable shiny event distribution yet. How might I just go on eBay and buy them from someone? The guy I got them from was a time traveller, assuring me that this event distribution does eventually occur. However, he said I couldn't know the exact date it happens, as it did cause a time travel paradox, which is totally understandable. Still not satisfied? What else? What else? Oh, let's use my e-reader method from earlier, but with slightly less drastic changes. Rewriting existing Pokemon to have a different image was going to be hard, but this was within my reach. See? Basically identical.
Hello.
How about this? As you can see, all three of them are very clearly standing in front of you, built in the correct order as well. Oh, that failed to convince you as well? God, I'm not paying that. Okie dokie. Monkey Dory. Fezandipit. Wait, what? So, put a little comment down below with your favourite method of me legitimately obtaining Okidogi, Monkey and Pheasantipity before Ogrepon. My personal favourite I'd vote for is all of them. Look, I know this isn't ideal. I'm not feeling okie dokie about it either. The fact is though, if I just decided to put this video on hold until they became available from events or whatever, you might be waiting years. If you had to wait that long, things would not be hunky-dory. It's a total gamble. They might become available in 2040, or the day after this video gets uploaded. I could not rely on such serendipity to occur. Just like what I had to do with Escavalier, I will say that they will eventually be added to Go, because, you know, they're gonna have to make that Pokédex completable eventually. Again though, that could take years. After all, when Pokemon Go came out in 2016, we were about to be introduced to Sun and Moon, but Go didn't add Gen 7 Pokemon until 2022. Well, Meltan was added in 2018, and there's also Alolan forms, but other than that, none. When I make this entire challenge into one huge compilation video, I'm going to put a little message here to let you know whether or not the Loyal 3 are now available for Ogrepon in some way. Thanks me, I feel a lot better now. It's a shame. The e-reader solution was the one I thought of a while back that I thought would be smart and creative. I was really hoping that my not so subtle hints to get the people on that server interested in looking further into this challenge would work, but no such luck. I hope that one day a huge YouTuber will watch my videos and be like, hey, this guy's videos are pretty interesting, or someone with 2,000 Twitch viewers will raid me and bring me past the unreasonably high 75 required average Twitch viewers to allow me to reach partner. One day, this Kiwi may learn to fly. But until that day comes, I'll still be working a 9 to 5 job and doing this on the side, having barely any time to actually edit, only being able to stream for 4 hours a week. With my videos I spend hundreds of hours working on making less than the price of a McDonald's delivery in most cases. Absolute misery. Putting monetary gain aside though, I'm proud of this challenge. You know, it's the first time in my life I've been genuinely pleased with a project and seen it through to the end, and I've been extremely happy with the reception I've gotten from it, along with the hype for each new video and the anticipation of what's to come next in the future of this channel. It's very sad that I couldn't get those 3 in the correct order, and I had to come up with something stupid to be able to move it forward. This challenge run that nobody has ever done may be possible to fully complete one day, if they ever do decide to add those 3 as events, or into Pokemon Go. But until that day comes, they're the only ones standing in the way of true perfection. Ah, who cares? Let's just get this out of the way and move on. Comparing myself to YouTubers with millions of subs? No one should ever do that. Be proud of what you've got and what you've achieved. It's all just for fun anyway. After knocking it out 4 times, 1 KO for each mask, I then caught it. A guaranteed capture of course, seeing as you were forced to obtain it. I caught it in a Safari Ball, which is something I'd never be seeing in an older game. With that done, I'd finally allowed myself to just move on and properly access the features of the Indigo Disc. I also nicknamed it Matabi. Kieran got all mad and ran off. Carmine wanted to battle me with Ogrepon in my team, which I actually didn't use at all because most of my Pokemon were in the 90s or level 100, and with that done, the Teal Mask concluded after many months of denial and procrastination. And then Kieran had his Joker transformation. I headed back to the terrarium where Carmine was acting like she'd been waiting for years, even though it had been about 10 minutes, and we battled yet again, but this time it was a double battle and her levels were ridiculously high. Every battle in the terrarium is like this. For the first time they actually made in-game battling quite difficult. Also, in the short time since I'd beaten him, Kieran had managed to become the champion of Blueberry Academy and had also turned into a not so nice guy. I met a guy with toothpaste hair, and I was finally welcomed into the League Club room. This place would have been useful earlier for getting starters to spawn, but for the purposes of this challenge now, it was completely useless. The main reason I went here before doing anything else was to get the catching charm, to hopefully make the next few catches a tiny bit easier. Those catches were, of course, the loyal 3. I had to actually catch them properly since I got them in a stupid way before. Or you could also interpret it as, I didn't get them at all earlier and now I need to fix the deficit, but regardless of which camp you're in, they needed to be caught here and now. Okie dokie took a while to catch. However, for the sake of convenience, I skipped straight to the winning timer ball. It was nicknamed Brit Fox. Wasting no time at all, I headed over to Monkey Dory to catch it properly as well. Although also in a timer ball, because this took many turns as well. It was nicknamed Metro Man, though unfortunately for him, Megamind was nowhere to be seen. It had become nighttime in-game, meaning that I could actually use Dusk Balls on the final one, Fezandipity. The quickest catch out of the 3, and I was glad to be done with that. It was nicknamed Kai Road, and I was able to just completely forget about this horrible roadblock. Until I started editing the video, obviously. Now, how's about we progress the Pokédex properly some more? I used the metal alloy I got a while back on the Duraludon I also got a while back to evolve it into Archaludon. Before I could get the next one, I needed to enter into the Blueberry League. I spoke to Drayton in the cafeteria and met the other Elite Four members and the champion Kieran, and for deliberating I was allowed to join. Drayton is the one you need to beat to be able to get Hydrapple, but he's also the hardest, so I left him until last while levelling up some new Pokémon in the background that had been caught in the terrarium. I actually forgot about the pre-battle trials that you have to do, as I'd only ever done this once before, and I guess I purged it from my memory because of how boring some of them are. Crispin's trial consisted of having to awkwardly collect ingredients from people by trading them, and then making a spicy sandwich. I can't lie, that actually does look really nice, ignoring the terrible presentation of course. Anyway, I did it right, he called me out for not picking on the top bun, and then it was battling time. Unfortunately, I seem to have this incredible ability to unintentionally construct the worst possible team for the late game, with this one missing a particularly vital ingredient to take down fire types. A water type. Quackoval was in Violet, and I didn't bother training it over, so I just had to struggle through the battle. As I said earlier, the teams are actually quite well constructed, and make heavy use of held items, so actual strategy was required. I did of course eventually win, but it was hard fought, unlike the entire E4 in Champion of Paldea. 1 out of 4 defeated. Next up was the Steel type, Amoris. The trial here was just flying through hoops, which was significantly less tedious than running around asking people for sausages and mayonnaise, and once that was done I was able to take on the E4 battle. This was one I was not expecting to have any trouble with, especially since I had deliberately put 2 fire types on my team, but it was significantly harder than the previous battle. Also, Earthquake is a thing that I probably should have accounted for. But I still won, and that's all that matters. It's not a speedrun. 2 out of 4 defeated. I took on Lacey next, whose trial was just a quiz, which is my area of expertise. Oh, no, actually, no, this is too difficult. I have no idea what that one is. I am not good with new Pokémon. Ah, good, that's not the question. After getting them all right first time, definitely don't check the VODs and find out that I actually got one of them wrong in the first attempt, I then entered the battle with Lacey. And she was actually the easiest out of the 4 because I just used brute force to get through it. 3 out of 4 defeated, and after the final member I'd be able to move the dex forward just a little bit more. Drayton's trial is an annoying one. His trainers can only be fought using Pokémon caught within the terrarium by the player, so you can't just steamroll them with your team of level 100s from the main story. Therefore, I constructed an okay-ish team from Pokémon I'd caught during my Blueberry Dex filling adventure, leveled them and gave them good enough moves. I actually went into this thinking that you had to use these against Drayton himself, but thankfully I found out that it's just his trainers, so not too bad. In fact, not just not too bad, more like incredibly easy. Drayton himself had an absolute beast of a team though, and I was not looking forward to fighting him, but I did what I must in order to move the Pokédex forward. I had employed my own actual strategy, such as giving Ninetales a choice scarf so that it didn't get one-hit KO'd by Flygon, ganging up on Haxorus who had a focus sash, and ignoring Dragonite for as long as possible because it was holding a Yashay berry, which I couldn't be bothered dealing with. Pre-planning actually results in a win. Who'd have thought it? 4 out of 4 defeated. And I got the TM for Dragon Cheer, which was the reason for doing the Elite Four before catching any new Pokémon. I withdrew Diplin for the first time in a while, gave it Dragon Cheer, leveled it up once, and it evolved into Hydrapple. Unfortunately, it was merged with this bush, so it didn't look quite as cool as I'd have hoped, but oh well. Now, I could have just gone straight to Area 0 to catch the remaining Paradox Pokémon, but you get a Master Ball for defeating the champion, and having 2 Master Balls would help me later because I had almost no catches left, and therefore I didn't care about using them up, even in Pokémon that may not be too hard to catch. And so I battled Champion Kieran, and despite his team being daunting, I did manage to take him down on my first attempt. It was not an easy one though. With that done, Kieran was dethroned within a few hours of becoming champion, and everyone lost interest in him, even Vileplume. Then I got a second Master Ball. There was also a lot more dialogue and exposition, along with an announcement to head to a classroom in Blueberry Academy, but I was not planning on moving the Indigo Disc story forward any further just yet. Instead, I headed to Area 0. I won't leave in the search for each of these Pokémon. I didn't use guides and that made the process take ages. I did eventually find Gouging Fire though. I threw a Quick Ball turn 1, you know, just in case. They have a catch rate of 10, which isn't as bad as the 3 that legendaries have, but I still wasn't expecting this to work. I nicknamed it Mudkip Katie, although I do not see any resemblance. I then headed straight for Raging Bolt, again not bothering to save beforehand since I was just planning on chucking a Master Ball if the initial Quick Ball failed. Damn. So, yeah, I just caught in a Master Ball because I had so few catches left that it really didn't matter. I called it Goobiz. Jumping into Violet, I ran around for a while and eventually found Iron Boulder. I threw a Quick Ball and... caught. After nicknaming it Chef Jason, I then went on the hunt for the last remaining Pokemon I'd need to catch in Violet. That was of course Iron Crown. And guess what happened for the 3rd time? Easy. Anyway, I nicknamed it Swagamick, and I hopped back to Scarlet to continue on with the story. TLDR is that Briar wants to take us all to the underdepths of Area 0 because there's a certain mysterious Pokemon down there. I wonder what that could be. Well, like usual, it was time to ignore the main goal and do something completely different. That's because I needed to get Meloetta. Yes, that's right, I needed to make up for getting it in Pokemon Go back in Gen 5 by catching it here, since it is indeed obtainable in the terrarium. Getting it is very simple. All you need to do is stand inside this cyclone of leaves, spin around... Go away Zangoose, no one asked for your opinion. Spin around clockwise for at least 10 seconds, then immediately bring out the camera, swap to the sepia filter, and look around and Meloetta will appear. It's very reminiscent of playground rumours. I genuinely have no idea how anyone would ever figure this out on their own. I just ran straight into the battle because I was planning on using a Master Ball, though I thought I'd do my usual just in case. No luck unfortunately. So yeah, I caught it, and once again made up for not getting it through normal means before. Now that Meloetta was caught, I'd managed to get every Pokemon properly that I'd had to get outside of a game's normal mechanics from an event, apart from the ones which, at least at the time of recording, have no in-game location. Those Pokemon are Genesect, Diancie, Hoopa, Volcanion, Marshadow, Zeraora, Meltan, Melmetal, and Zarude. In case you were curious, I did catch Victini properly in-game at the end of the Gen 5 video. Even though it required an event, I still consider that obtaining it through a proper method. And I'll now just mention something you may be wondering in regards to Glastrier and Spectrier. I didn't actually get them in an alternative way before, because catching Calyrex and therefore getting its steed is a completely legitimate way of obtaining it in Sword and Shield. I just happened to catch them both at the same time on 2 switches in handheld mode. Therefore, I do not need to catch them individually in Scarlet and Violet, like I would have to do if I obtained a Pokemon via a side game, glitch, or event. I actually went ahead and unjoined them in both Sword and Shield to show that I have obtained them properly. To be perfectly honest though, you'll be thankful I didn't have to get the steeds again. If I did, it'd mean that I would have to run around for ages in both Scarlet and Violet, picking up thousands of blueberry points to trade in for a chance of getting one of the many snack items. Except you don't get to choose which one you get, and I'd be sitting there soft resetting, potentially for hours. Oh, and it would require me to complete a lot more of the game in Violet than otherwise needed, and I was getting really sick of the sight of these games. So yeah, I vetoed that suggestion. Now that everything was properly resolved, it was time to finally actually complete this Pokédex, once and for all. We all went to Area 0, taking the titular indigo disc with us to open up the gate. Great pun. After some elevator banter, we reached the Area 0 underdepths. This was a lot longer than I remembered, since I'd only ever done it once, over a year ago. I had to clear out all these crystals by knocking out Stellar-type terrestrialized Pokemon, and after doing that a bunch of times with no help from any of the others, I reached the bottom. Kieran found the treasure of Area 0, like the name of the DLC, and this object, which is identical to a green rupee from Skyward Sword, turned into Terrapagos. Kieran caught it, and that's it. Challenge ruined. Again. Nah, I'm just kidding. I knocked it out, and then it somehow stopped being his Pokemon, and transformed into its big scary stellar form. And this battle took a very long time. I did not plan ahead at all, and didn't realise how tanky this thing was, so obviously I'll just skip to the end. Unfortunately, Kieran dealt the final blow, but oh well. After it was defeated, we were greeted by a very apt and very true statement.
Trans women are women. Trans men are men. Non-binary people are valid and deserve legal protection. Fuck the UK Supreme Court. Double fuck JK Rowling.
Double fuck JK Rowling indeed. Love is love, and I'm gonna throw a love ball. Hey hey. I'm so smooth. Yeah, very smooth indeed, me from the past. By the way, if you're one of the people who complained about my trans-positive message in the previous videos, get off my channel and never watch my videos again. Anyway, after watching the ridiculously long animation, it was caught and I only had one more Pokemon to go. Much later on, I realised I forgot to nickname it, so here's the nickname, Wanna Pikachu. They had an I at the beginning of the name, but that didn't fit. So anyway, back to the story. Things were resolved, Kieran stopped being weird, a message showed up that approximately 3 people on Earth will understand, Ed Sheeran played at the end credits again, so I stuck his face on screen again, and then I had to rematch every gym leader and beat the Academy Ace tournament to be able to do the epilogue. Fun. So I did step 1 of that, being an inspector for the gyms to make sure that they aren't all useless. Fighting Katie, Brassius, Iono, Tulip, Kofu, Larry, Rhyme, and Grusha. You'll be glad I cut that all down. It took forever. I was just mashing the A button through all the dialogue, trying to get to the end as quickly as possible, so I answered Katie for every single one of these questions, calling her both the easiest and hardest gym leader, and my favourite, apparently. But of course, that wasn't it. I needed to beat the tournament itself, but thankfully it was only 4 battles, so to cut a long story short, I beat Arvin, Jacques, Dendra, and Gita. Calm down everyone, I've not beaten the Pokédex just yet. I was now able to actually take on the epilogue, looking at this dusty decoration which was supposedly moving, and then I got a call from Arvin. And oh no, the decoration has disappeared. How spooky. So this was the beginning of the epilogue, Mochi Mayhem, which I imagine not very many people have seen. It is definitely the weirdest storyline out of every game in the series. I went home for the first time since the very start of the game, and we all planned a fun little trip to Kitakami, where absolutely nothing bad was going to happen. The Paldea squad met Kieran, and then also met Carmine, who was acting a little bit excited. Don't worry about it though. At night, in the community centre, we had to hunt to find a TV remote to turn off the boring tourism videos. I found it, and instead of doing some gaming, we had to go look for Nimona, who had disappeared. And this is when the seriously weird stuff started. This is true Pokemon horror. Forget Lavender Town, Hypno, the Old Chateau, the strange house in Unova. People being possessed and doing a weird chicken dance is the most disturbing this franchise has ever been. The funny and weird mochi dancing was broken up by a bunch of battles, which didn't help me much since all my Pokemon were level 100. But after winning, we found Kieran's grandparents, who also ended up turning into mochi zombies due to them eating the forbidden mochi. After beating their teams as well, Arvin and Penny called as they were still sane. Also, I saw the only smoothly animated cutscene in the entire game, featuring the very last Pokemon needed for the Pokédex. These mouth breathers ended up swallowing the mochi, though my guy dodged it and Kieran, being a loser as always, got hit in the head by it. And so we had to battle Arvin and Penny. After winning that battle, the funny purple thing ran off and we met Nimona, who had also been mochified. Along with literally everyone else. And now it was time for me to take on the very last trainer of Scarlet and Violet. And it was a long time coming. Nimona happened to be the only person who was strong enough to resist just saying mochi on repeat. After KOing her Quackowal, I had one more battle to go. That was of course against the strange Pokemon, which happens to be Pecharunt, and I sent out Ogerpon first to see if it would cause unique dialogue, since in lore, Pecharunt controls the Loyal 3 and made them do all the bad things to Ogerpon. It did have unique dialogue, definitely worth getting knocked out for. I thought I had it in the bag with Raichu paralysing it, but unfortunately it had boosted its stats a lot and Malignant Chain was a one-hit KO. Thankfully, Skeledirge came in at the end to save the day, and with that done, I was able to catch Pecharunt. I threw a Luxury Ball, with my chatters being very excited to see the ending, and with that capture, I had officially obtained every single Pokemon, all 1025 of them, at the time of recording, in Pokédex order. Just ignore the times where I had to bend the rules. Also, the nickname of the final Pokemon was Rachel. Pecharunt was caught, and everyone went back to normal. Arvin acknowledged that my thing is catching Pokemon, very correct, and after everyone had awoken, a few days passed, everyone reconvened, they had a little laugh together, and they all lived happily ever after. And thus, the epilogue concluded, and, for now at least, so has my Pokédex. And now that I've completed the Pokédex, I'm gonna go make a cup of tea. I'll see you all in the next challenge. Thank you to everyone who managed to get all the way to the end of this challenge. And a huge special thank you goes out to my Twitch mods who were amazing and diligent throughout this 4-month journey. Yeti Bite, Devour Gregs, Darkened Razor, and Brit Fox. This was a wild ride and it took me a whole year to finish this one off. Generation 9 was of course a huge one, the only one needing to be stretched over 2 videos, or 3 if Legends ZA adds more Pokemon, which is highly likely. And obviously if Generation 10 comes out, I'll also be picking up the challenge again for those games. I will not lie though, I am very glad to be done with Scarlet and Violet. Exclusively playing them on stream weekly for almost 4 months was very tedious. So if you're watching this on release date, come on down to Twitch, where I'll be playing literally anything other than Scarlet and Violet. And of course, feel free to come watch me on Twitch on any Thursday, or if you miss the streams, check out my VODs channel. And even if you don't like streams, I've still got lots of other videos on my channel, filled with silly challenges and the usual edits and post commentary. And with all that said, I hope to see you all in the next one. Oh, you're still here? Well, you're clearly the most dedicated Kiwi fan of all time. I guess there should be some kind of reward for you. I know. How about a face reveal?